So, bait culture. Doesn't it suck? Isn't it just painful to direct your attention in any direction and be presented with a non-stop barrage of attention-seeking bullshit? Like, it was one thing when Pyrocynical put a little car sex out there, you know? It was never the end of the world when PewDiePie thought he'd throw a few boobs in his thumbnails. Bitch. But now, it's everywhere. It's inescapable. And would you believe it? It's infiltrated our news institutions.
Well, no shit.
Yeah, no, but really. Tabloids were one thing. Now I feel like the term tabloid has lost any and all power. They're all tabloids. Today, we have an article from the Irish Times, which has just relentlessly peeved me over the last few days now, and every time I come back to it, it manages to find a new way of hurting my brain. Now, like any good news consumer in the year of our Lord 2025, I'm primarily concerned about the headline, because this headline might just be one of the greatest pieces of bait I have witnessed in perhaps my life with regards to pissing off every single fucking person across the entirety of the political spectrum who may make the misfortune of reading it. Quote, Irish teenagers are so innocent. Where I'm from, we learn not to be so naive. Whoa. To give a little gist of the article, it's about a Brazilian dancer who moved to Ireland to further his dance career. How does this tie into the title of the article? Maybe 2-3 throwaway lines, or maybe a paragraph. But of course, for the sake of those clicks and that oh so valuable Twitter engagement, our article author Ella Sloane just had to make that line the headline.
Actually, it's X.
Yeah, listen here, bro. You're gonna be an X if you don't shut the fuck. Now, this isn't the Scratch or immigration special, right? Long and short of that, I don't really like people. I don't like being around large groups of people. I think we had enough scumbags before basically opening our borders in 2021, and maybe I'm just autistic, but I find it overwhelming nowadays to get on a bus and hear damn near every language bar the one that initially colonised us. I'm not strictly anti-immigration. I just think it's quite literally impossible for so many large swaths of people to assimilate to a completely different culture like that when you're bringing in that many of them that quickly. And yeah, I'm sorry, I do think it's important to preserve the culture of my country. At risk of being called a dirty dog whistler, I don't particularly think we have a need for any more phone repair and vape shops. All that said, I still like to live by the principle of judging people by the content of their character rather than, you know,
Oh, Crystal Digger, I thought you were my friend, but you're just a dirty...
But getting back to the article and putting my feelings on the burning dumpster fire I reside in aside, this article is an example of bait that exists purely for the sake of bait. This journalist wouldn't have titled this article in such a way if they weren't just a self-serving scumbag piece of... If they didn't care about anything more than clickbaiting and engagement farming. They being Ella Sloane, or hopefully giving the benefit of the doubt, her Irish Times editor, chose this title because they knew it would upset those whom they perceive as far right. And good job, you did. You just forgot to think for a second though. This would piss off just about anyone with a functional brain. Now, I wasn't exactly a yup bro chav young fella in my upbringing. I've stated before that I'm pretty much an MK Ultra experiment raised by my television and computer boxes. But a big part of that was because I was the naive one. The Irish teenagers weren't. I very strongly remember a time when I was maybe no older than 12, 13, still very sheltered, still very autistic, for lack of a better term. Emotionally, I was probably barely over half my age, and all the bigger kids in the neighbourhood who more or less avoided me years for being an annoying little shit who just wanted to talk about SpongeBob, the English comedy shows I loved, or GTA, all of a sudden wanted me to go out with them. And my ma very strictly wouldn't let me go out because I was having noodles that night. And I was very upset with me ma for this. But after only a couple years and my first sense of self-awareness coming around, I came to the realisation that, yeah, they probably didn't have any good intentions for me that evening. What were they gonna do? I don't know. but I have a feeling that innocent would not be the term used to describe it. Irish teenagers are not innocent. They just don't run around the favelas shooting and stabbing each other. And if that's our standard for innocence, then no wonder this country is screwed. See, I really think a lot of undue pressure has been put on, or should I say, a target has been made of this fella, whose face they had no trouble plastering in the thumbnail to this article. If I were any more cynical, I'd say the news media is intentionally using this fella as bait to get an extremist to do something stupid. In the very least, attributing that one line that has very little to do with the rest of the article to that face plastered in the thumbnail is a scumbag move that clearly shows very little regard for the person interviewed, at least in our ever increasingly hostile climate. Like, he talks about moving here, but he primarily talks about his dance classes, and that whole line about Irish teenagers being innocent comes from talking to the people attending his dance class. Like, not to be a prick, but it's dance classes. Those sorts of things tend to attract those that you'd refer to as soft, harmless, gay. I don't think it's homophobic to say that gay people, especially gay teenagers, are often not the perpetrators of bullying and violence. You know, it's usually the other way around, and thus kind of foolish to use them as a sampling for all Irish teenagers. But either way, this extra context at least explains where he got that from. Without it, he just seems like an arsehole trying to ask someone to try something on him, which clearly isn't what he intended when he said yes to that interview with the beacon of journalistic integrity known as the Irish Times. And look, even if I'm not a fan of this fella, or my government's policies that got him in here, or my government's intention to import half the world here so Dublin can become a miniature New York City, I can still see when someone is very clearly getting fucked over. And this guy is. The way this article is presented, it reads like victim blaming in a society that is unfortunately growing increasingly weary of, well, to be frank, people not from here committing acts of violence on our soil. You know, as if it's actually the Irish people's fault for being naive to the big bad world, and we really should have copped on to this a while ago. Yeah, put it that way, actually, yeah, we should have copped on, but I'm getting ahead of myself. To put a little more context as to why I think making that the headline is so inflammatory. See, if you're a Yankee or just an international viewer, you might remember that there were riots here in Dublin last November, but you might not have heard what actually got people so angry as to riot in the first place. The stabbing of 5 people in broad daylight on one of our busiest streets, 3 children and 2 adults, perpetrated by an Algerian-born Irish citizen who'd immigrated and been living here 20 years by the name of... Oh right, his identity is protected under Irish law. Because sympathy for the devil is more than just a Rolling Stones song here, it's how we run the country. Judge Martin Nolan. And look, I'm not being racist here, I don't think John Venables or Rob Thompson deserve protection either, but more to the point, ever since this occurred, the Irish government, instead of even just pretending to tackle the issue of foreign crime on Irish soil, because, don't get me wrong, as I said, we had enough scumbags here as things were, but the tensions that led to that riot, they didn't just build overnight. And while I'm not a hardcore blood and soil, get them all out, 100% Gael nationalist, I can still see where some of these types have some valid points. The Irish government, however, they have done everything in their power alongside the Irish media to sweep under the rug any similar incidents and call anyone who commits the thought crime of noticing these incidents far right. And of course, the universe's cosmic sense of humour returned the favour by making these incidents occur at a faster and faster rate, to the point where it's just kind of impossible to ignore. Like really, it's actually quite depressing. I know these claims are purely anecdotal, because I'm genuinely fucking stupid and don't jot down on a pen and paper every time I hear about another stabbing and or murder in my country. But I have an awful feeling that there's been an awful lot of stabbing and murder in my country as of late. To the point where, a couple weeks ago, I was waking up every other day, checking the news and going, another one, and another one, and another one. And that you get my fucking point. But yeah, while I could spend more time talking about our media, I honestly think it might be better off to make a whole separate video, because I was going to get into the whole case of Hazim. But to put a long story short, this guy not only pretended he was coming to Ireland straight from Gaza with nowhere else to go, he ran a barber shop in South Africa for 5 odd years, stabbed a footballer with scissors, because of course the barber stabs a fella with scissors, had that stabbing reported in South African tabloids, and somehow both the Irish government and RTE were oblivious to these facts when they decided to not only take him in, but run a puff piece for him, raising money for his GoFundMe. Also worth noting, I suppose, this whole piece that RTE ran was about how he couldn't get emergency accommodation here. However, a few paragraphs in, it's revealed that he has been offered emergency accommodation here, but he refused it because he specifically wanted emergency accommodation that could fit him, his wife, and his 2 children. So, like, a full-size house. In this economy.
Dude, like, oh my god, like, can we talk about, like, the political and economic state of
Here, my beloved.
right now?
It hurts so fucking hurt!
Also, he was later interviewed by Gript, but the bastards, God forgive me, I know they're literally the only right-of-centre leaning news publication here, put it behind a paywall, which does give me an unfortunate feeling that perhaps they paid him for this interview. Regardless, in this interview, he stated that both he had residency in South Africa and, quote, used to own multiple businesses there. He declined to answer if he had a house there. And when asked the ultimate question, why not move back to South Africa with your family, he said that he had nothing there now, and that it was dangerous. Anyway, my whole point in saying all of that was to highlight just how fucking reckless and malicious it is for the Irish media to make that the headline. Not only to insinuate that after all this shit, the Irish people are naive, that they're the ones to blame, to insinuate that we asked for this by not being careful, it's our fault for being so innocent. Again, I'm almost certain that the person interviewed for this article did not mean what I am pulling here from this, okay? I've played Max Payne 3, I've seen City of God, I know the Brazilian favelas aren't exactly sunshine and rainbows. But the author/editor of this article was damn well aware of what they were implying, and I find that rather disgusting. Not only to underwrite this guy's whole life story because of one obvious observation delivered at an undue time in the political climate, but to knowingly use his words in a way that would inherently pit him against an ever-growing portion of the Irish political populace is just insidious in a way that words can't convey. Something, all I want to say is that they don't really care about us.
I'd love to see him succeed in today's climate.
God damn it!